In the beginning of Parashat Beha'lotecha, Aaron is given the job of lighting the menorah, a very special menorah that was made out of pure gold. This incident, this episode, occurs after the fact that many other great leaders amongst the Jewish people received jobs, important jobs, and Aaron felt bad that he was not included. And that's a very important point. Feeling bad of not having been included to do a job. Most people try to get away from doing jobs. Here Aaron feels that it would be a privilege if you were to be assigned an important job as well, to participate, to have an important role in the service of Hashem. So Aaron is finally given a job that is considered more important than all the other jobs put together, and that is the lighting the menorah. In order to understand why this job is important, it is a good idea to try to understand what the menorah is all about. The menorah is made out of pure gold. It's one solid piece. It's not made of parts put together. It all had to be made of one solid piece of gold. And it had 7 lights, or 7 candles, if you can call them 7 wicks, of which the 6 on both sides were pointing towards the middle one. Altogether 7. This is the real menorah, not the one that you see on Hanukkah, which has 8, to commemorate the 8 days of Hanukkah, that the Shem and the oil lasted 8. The menorah in the Beit HaMikdash had 7 lights. So what is the idea behind the menorah? We don't know all the secrets behind it, but there are some important ideas. First of all, the pasuk says, Ner Hashem nishmat adam. The neshama of a human being is compared to a candle, to a light. And just like a light, a fire, cannot live by itself, it needs to hang on to a wick. You just can't light a fire in thin air. It has to hold on to a petil, to a wick. In the same way, for a neshama to function in this world, it has to be placed in a body. So the physical body that we all have, that we all share, is like a wick for the neshama. As long as there is oil, right, there is fire. As long as the body has food, as long as it has sustenance, as long as it's healthy, it's alive, the neshama can remain inside. Once the body dies, the neshama, it's not the other way around, the neshama leaves first. It's that the body dies and then the neshama. So there's a comparison between the neshama and the candle. There's also significance in the light itself. What's the meaning of light? Light does several things. Sunlight has been demonstrated to give warmth, it gives light, it gives life to plants, and most recently it has been demonstrated that it also gives solar energy. All of this is very important qualities of sunlight. But that is not the significance of this light that we're talking about in the menorah. Here in the menorah, there is a characteristic of light which is the most important characteristic of all. And that is that with one light, with one candle, you can light 1,000 candles or 1,000,000 candles with the original candle. And by lighting 1,000,000 other candles, you are not taking away, you're not detracting from the. It's the same exact light. And with that one original small light, you're able to light all these millions. This is symbolic of chesed. Chesed is the act of doing acts of kindness, being kind unto others. When one is kind, he does not take away anything from himself. He did not lose anything. It's not that you gave away your money and now you have $100 left. That's called charity. Well, charity you had, now you have something left. Kindness, you can be kind and do acts of kindness to others without detracting, without taking anything away from yourself. Aaron is given the job of lighting the menorah because he was known to be a kind person. The greatest kindness that Aaron did was to make shalom with two people. When he would find out that there was a couple that was having a fight, they were not getting along, friends that became bitter enemies, he would go out of his way to try to bring them together. And the way he did it was, as it's told in the Midrash, he would approach Reuven and tell Reuven, Shimon is so remorseful. He regrets what he did to you. He feels bad. He'd love to get back here. Shimon never told him that, but he would say so anyway to Reuven. And Reuven would get all excited. Shimon really feels bad, so do I. He would go the next day to Shimon and tell him how Reuven feels so bad, how he's remorseful, he regrets everything. And in the end, because he would speak to the two of them, these two, Reuven and Shimon, after a couple of days, they would meet each other in the street, they would embrace and hug, right, and make up, not knowing that all the efforts that went in here was due to Aaron. So Aaron was Isha Chesed. He went out of his way to make Chesed, and the biggest Chesed that one can do is to make peace amongst people, to make peace amongst between husband and wife, or between two friends. So it was very befitting for Aaron more than anybody else to light the menorah, which was symbolic of Chesed. This menorah was of solid gold. But it was not only solid gold, it was one piece, miksha achat. What's the idea behind miksha achat? You cannot make it from pieces. Because one of the difficulties that people have in doing chesed, or in helping others, is because they see a distance. That he's not my relative. I have nothing in common with him. He's not my brother. Some people would not even do for their own brother. That's a whole different story. But people usually shy away from strangers. They don't feel any sympathy to this individual because they don't feel close to him. Torah tells us that the menorah, symbolic of the Jewish nation, has to be miksha achat. It's one solid piece. We're all one nation. We're one people. We're one family. Consider every other Jew, your fellow brother, as though he would be in your immediate family. You would help out your own children, of course, hopefully, right? Your own brothers and sisters, your parents. So look at him as part of the same, miksha achat, part of the same group. And it's solid gold. Why solid gold? The rabbis tell us, for example, about Jewish women. Jewish girls, the rabbis tell us in the Gemara, are all beautiful. So why don't some look beautiful? Because of the oni, because of poverty. Poverty takes or hides the beauty of a woman. So if it wouldn't be for the poverty, they would all be beautiful. Am Yisrael maybe doesn't look so good, like we say, shechora ani v'nava. I may be black, I may look black, darkened by the galut, by the diaspora, by the suffering and the fusion. But shechora ani v'nava, I'm still beautiful. Deep inside, I'm beautiful. Zahav, even if it gets dirty, all it needs is a shine. If you polish it and you shine it, it's not like metal that becomes oxidized, becomes rusty, right? And it's easy to shine. All it is a little bit dirty, and all it requires is a little bit of a shine. So it has to be of pure gold. It has to be completely clean. There are, of course, other ideas we may have mentioned in the past about shemen, what is represented in oil. Oil floats on top of water. The Jews have mixed with other nations. That's also symbolic of the oil. So Aharon is given this job of lighting the candles because he was the one that brought into the homes of people. He brought the light to people's homes, the happiness. And that's why he was given this. The Torah tells us that after Aharon received instructions, it says, Vayas ken Aharon. Aharon did so. He was told. So everybody asks a famous question in this parasha. Why is the Torah telling this to him? It's obvious. If he did it, what did he hesitate? Did he refuse? Why does the Torah praise him that he did as he was told? He followed the instruction. The reason is as follows. Most of you probably have heard of something called burnout. You're 25 years at a job, or for some people it's after 5 years. They don't have to wait 25 years. After 5 years, they're already burnt out. They're looking to change careers. This can happen in other areas as well, not only in your career. This can happen in any job that a person is doing, even a spiritual job. A person can feel it's very difficult for him. He's burnt out. Now, of course, if he's Jewish, if he's observant, he's not going to let go. He's not going to stop his thought. But what will happen if there's a little bit of a degree of burnout? He will lose the excitement. He may not stop doing it. He may not change careers, but he may not have the same excitement. Unfortunately, this can happen between a husband and wife too. They're all excited when they're engaged. They think of not being apart. They're just waiting to get married. The first year, they're very close to each other. My wife always complained, he used to wash dishes for me. I said, yeah, I will still do it, but today I have 5 kids, Baruch Hashem. Well, it doesn't mean that I'm not excited anymore to help out in the house. Right?
Tell her that she was waiting for you at the door when you came. No more.
Right. So things change with time. It's true. With time, one gets used to it, and that is one of the reasons of Ilchot Nidah, Tarat HaMishpacha, family feud. Torah says, you know what, let's take the husband away from his wife for 12 days a month. You will see that they'll have a new husband when they come back together. And of course, this is of course conditioned on that they are getting along okay. Then this helps and enhances it even more. They're apart, they can't touch, they can't do anything. So there is always a risk of losing excitement. One of the explanations given over here that what Aharon did, the reason the Torah emphasizes that he did as he was told, he did it with the same excitement. He never veered. Every time he went up, every time he did it, after many, many times, he still did so, as though it would be the first time. Right. That's not easy. That's not easy, regardless of the job. Now, of course, somebody who loves his job and he's thrilled about it, and he wakes up every morning just excited to go to work, but most people are not excited to wake up in the morning. Aaron was very excited and did it with the same amount of excitement every single time. Now, how does he do that? How does he come to that? And the trick over here is, as with any other mitzvah, it's called l'shem shamayim. When one realizes that the reason he's doing something it's because he's doing it for the sake of heaven, then he doesn't feel it's a burden. You may have heard that there's an Yiddish expression in Eastern Yerushalayim that it's difficult to be a Jew. You may hear it sometimes. It's not accurate. It's not an accuracy. Of course, being an observant Jew requires a amount of commitment. There are many responsibilities. You have to be knowledgeable how to Shabbat. It's not easy. But those who express themselves that it's difficult to do are saying something else. They're saying that it's a burden on them. They would Halila rather not have it on them, possibly. I'm not saying that anybody feels that way. One should never say so. Because if one were to know what he's accomplishing every mitzvah, when he puts on tefillin every morning, when he puts on tzitzit, when he kisses the mezuzah on his door, if he would realize what he's accomplishing, what benefit that is for his family and for the world, would he look at it as a burden? We don't see the immediate benefit of the mitzvot. You know the difference between Yeser Tov and Yeser Hara, the bad instinct. The bad instinct pays cash. Hey, you want to enjoy life? I pay cash. You can enjoy it right away. Try it, do it now, and you'll see what enjoyment of life is, right? Yetzirah Tov says, I promise I'll give you a check post-dated, 120 years from now, right? It's post-dated, that means I have to wait 120 years, or whatever it is, to cash this check so I can enjoy the mitzvot, the reward for the mitzvot. So a normal human being who doesn't have tremendous faith in God, and he's told about this Gan Eden business, Olam Haba, he doesn't feel excited about it. When he does something, it's a burden. It's difficult for him. One who does it L'Shem Shamayim, for the sake of heaven, he knows that this is important. He knows that this is a commandment. God doesn't need this. Why does he care if I eat kosher or not? Hashem has no direct benefit from this. It makes a difference to us. All the mitzvot are for our benefit. Every single mitzvah. Some we could see, like honor your father and your mother. Even the Goyim would adopt that one. Don't steal. Society needs this kind of a mitzvah. So there are some that are obvious, even Goyim have adapted. Some that are logical, we can understand. But some are decrees. So if the logical ones are good for us, the other ones should also be good. They came from the same entity, they came from the same God. Right? The people, of course, look at it as a burden. Shabbat is a burden. This is a burden. This is a burden. I can't have this, I can't have that. If you treat it as a burden, then there's always the risk that at some point down the road, you may want to unload this burden. If one doesn't see it as a burden, if one sees it as, this is my duty, right? This is, a mitzvah from Hashem. This is a privilege. Then he does it L'Shem Shamayim, and he does it with excitement, and he doesn't get burned out. Another way to go about it, if we were to pay attention to prayer, the Siddur, the rabbis put together for us all sorts of prayers. Prayers that have requests, and prayers that contain praises to the Almighty. In the praises to the Almighty, there are some that remind us all the good that He does for us. For example, in the morning we make blessings, we're able to get out of bed, right? All the blessings that we make in the morning, why do we say it right away in the morning? So we shouldn't take nothing for granted when we start our day. He gives us sight. Some people take it for granted. A lot of people can't see. I always tell people, go and visit the hospital, see how many people are worse off than you. They may have money in their bank account, but they're paralyzed. They're worse off. Be happy with what you have. Be happy that you can breathe. Be happy that with your two eyes, that you can walk. But we take these things for granted. All these ideas are in the prayer book, and if we pay attention to them and we observe them on a daily basis, then we will be thankful. If we are thankful, then we will want to do what Hashem wants and expects of us. In other words, He's giving me so much, I owe Him so much. How could I ever repay Him? That should be the attitude. But as we will soon see in the Parasha, there are quite a few individuals who have the opposite attitude. They are very demanding. Instead of being thankful and grateful, they demand, they expect. And that's terrible news. Okay, before we get to those groups of people, there's one more item here by the menorah, and that is that Aaron, even though he was a tall individual, and the menorah was about 5 feet high, and he was taller than the menorah, he was still told to go up steps. He could have lit easily the menorah one by one, without going on steps.
Where was it?
There were a few steps right before the menorah, small steps.
And he was on the ground?
Yeah, the steps were on the ground, like a wood, made from wood or whatever.
And the menorah was on the floor.
Yeah, on the floor, exactly. So it was 5 feet high, and he was much higher, much taller than 5 feet. He would still go up. What was the purpose of this? Kavod. Exactly. The steps show kavod, honor for them. He's going up to do something very, very important, very significant. Well, one is given a job, he may underestimate its true value. I think, this is just enough. No, Aaron was told to go up the steps because this is a very important job. A lot of people, especially when it comes to Avodat Kodesh, children, minimize it. They think it's nothing. And a lot of them have left education. They used to be educators and have left seeking other jobs. They made a terrible mistake. Well, everybody depending on their circumstance. Teaching children is, if you're capable, if you're talented, if you're able to do so, that is a beautiful thing to do. Some complain it doesn't pay as well. That's not the reason why somebody should be teaching. I think I told you the story. There was once an individual who was asked by a rabbi, why did you decide to become a teacher? Or why do you want to become a teacher? He said, because I heard they pay well. Well, then you're not qualified. We don't want teachers who want to become money. We want teachers who want to give over the Chokhmat Torah. That should be the reason. There was another individual, the Hazonish. He was consulting with him. He wanted to leave. He wanted to go polish diamond, be a diamond polisher. It was a good job. 30, 40, 50 years. And the Hazonish says, why do you want to go? You're already polishing diamonds. Why do you want to change jobs? What do you think you're doing with children? You're polishing them. So the Torah wants to remind Aharon, a Kohen, of the importance of his job. Like going up the steps. That Avodat HaKodesh is a very important Avodah. That he be happy that he has this assignment. It's a privilege. It's definitely not a burden. Some people have a complaint when it comes to Avodat HaKodesh. They say it's too difficult. Just too difficult for them to do everything. The rabbis remind us, Lo alecha melecha ligmor. The job is not intended to do it all on your own. Hashem has many players in the world, just like a chess game. That everybody has a different role, has a different job. It's not expected of you, of any one individual, to do everything. So don't be discouraged when you see that the job is difficult, that you may not be able to finish everything you need to do. If you don't finish it, somebody else will. There are a lot of people that have jobs, and the Kadosh Baruch Hu has assigned each one a part. So one should not be discouraged if you find it too difficult and you cannot complete it. Alright, in the Parasha Beha'lotecha we find 4 groups of people. We find a group of people that complained, but their complaint was a very unusual complaint. The halacha is if you are not able to bring Korban Pesach on time because you were unclean, you were tameh, you have a second chance a month later to bring the Korban Pesach. That's called Pesach Sheni. It's called Pesach Sheni. Where do we know this from? This mitzvah came out in Parashat Beha'lotecha, that there was a group of people who were unclean. They had to bury dead people, or they had to take care of a funeral. They became unclean to a deceased person. And because they did not have enough time to become clean, they could not bring the Korban Pesach on time, they are given a second chance. This is the mitzvah that Moshe discusses here, that you have an opportunity to do the Korban Pesach again if you were unclean the first time around. How did this mitzvah come about? Because this group of people complained to Hashem, complained to Moshe. Why should we be left out of this important mitzvah of bringing Korban Pesach? We would also want to have a chance. It's a very important mitzvah to do the will of Hashem, to bring the sacrifice of Pesach. And they were given a second opportunity. So in this group of people, they have a complaint, but it's a good complaint. They want to do something good. They don't want to be left out. Okay, so that's the first group.
The whole week, Pesach, like we do the usual.
Not everything exactly this. No.
One day.
Just the Korban Pesach, yeah. Oh. You have another group of people, the ones who became the Nesi'im, the ministers, the heads. Who were they? How were they chosen? They were the ones, the rabbis tell us, they were the shofrim, they were the policemen. Remember the Egyptians, just like the Germans in Mashama. What kind of policemen did they use? They try to get Jewish police to use new Yiddish. They inspire their own brothers, reformers. The Paro tried to use Jewish policemen because also it would be perhaps easier to get the work done. You would use Jews as policemen, as guards. Many of the policemen in the Midbar that were assigned by the Egyptians did not hit their brothers, did not push them too hard. They were compassionate, they felt bad for them. And they had the power to do something, if they wanted to enforce the law, but they did not. They were very careful in treating their fellow brethren properly, and as a result of this zechut, this merit, they became the leaders among the Jews. So these 2 groups are the positive group, or the good groups, people who thought not of themselves, but of the other. That is what they have in common. The other 2 groups, exactly the opposite. You have the Asafsuf and the Mitonanim. The Mitonanim were the ones who were complaining about things were getting tough in the desert. Let's go back to Egypt, right? Yeah. Things were difficult. The other group was Asafsuf, the multitudes, which came from the Erev Rav, the ones who converted and joined the Jewish people.
They joined the Jewish people when the Jews were leaving Egypt, but now things were becoming difficult. They wanted watermelon, they wanted meat, they wanted to have all the good food, they wanted to go back to Egypt. So you have two groups that are complaining and giving the Jews a hard time. What's the difference between these two groups? One is thinking of himself, like the Sapsuf and the Mitonanim, and the other ones are not thinking of him. The first two groups, the one who wanted to do the mitzvah of Korban Pesach, the other one who cared about their Jewish brothers, who did not hit them. What did they show? They show that they don't care about themselves, even though they were in danger of being punished for not doing the job properly. The other ones could get away with it. So they were unclean, so they didn't have to bring the Korban Pesach. They could. No, they did not want to just not do it. They wanted to do the mitzvah of Hashem. The basic difference between these groups is the one thinks of himself and one thinks of the other. People who think of themselves first will always complain, will always be demanding. And this happens whether it's in a husband-wife relationship at home, or with two friends, or a boss and an employee. If the employee doesn't think of himself, he thinks about his job. If that's the most important thing, he will do a better job. Right? If somebody thinks of himself, he might steal, he might not put in all the hours that he's supposed to, right? Cheat, and so forth. There's a big difference here between if somebody thinks of himself or somebody thinks about his job. What's more important to him? The best way to look at it is as an ambassador to a country. An ambassador to a country has certain responsibilities and jobs. One of them is basically to represent his country. What if he, during the time that he's supposed to be representing his country, he goes to the bar and has smokes some drugs, right? Plays cards, right? And does other things, right? He's thinking of himself. He's representing himself, not representing his country, right? With this, you will understand another very important point. One of the most difficult questions in the Sefer Shemot Bamidbar is that you will notice, if you read the story of the Jewish people going to the desert for 40 years, a very, very difficult thing to understand. One of the most difficult questions. These people have seen miracles. They've witnessed so much. They saw it with their own eyes. They saw Kriyat Yamsuf, the Red Sea splitting. They had man every day coming down from the heaven. They had water wherever they went. The clouds were protecting them. Right? Everything was going very well for them. So why should they ever think of complaining? Right? Didn't they complain so many times? The rabbis tell us, 10 times our forefathers tested Hashem in the desert. There's another in the desert, Bamidbar, B'Yamsuf. There's another midrash that says 10 times HaKadosh Baruch Hu tested us. Well, it makes a big difference. Who did the testing? If Hashem tested us, then it's okay. He's allowed to test us. If we tested Him, that's definitely no. How do you reconcile the two? The way you reconcile the two is that some of the tests were in fact Hashem testing us. I'll give you an example. If you read the Parashiyot, you will find at some point the Jewish nation complains, we want water, we're thirsty, after 3 days without drinking. Now, that's valid, right? If you want to drink. So who was doing the testing? Hashem. Why is He doing the testing? Why did He hold back water for 3 days? You're taking out millions of people to the desert, right? Even though they trusted you, but you provide, just like you eventually did. Eventually you did. But why in the beginning did you give them a hard time? Now here it comes. We say it says it in Tehillim, and we say it in Erev Shabbat. 40 shana akut bador va'omar am to'eh levavhem vehem lo yade'u derachai. For 40 years I kept quiet, Hashem said. This is a generation that does not understand my way. Am to'eh levav. They're confused, lost. Lo yade'u derachai. They don't understand my ways. They don't understand why I do certain. So what happened during the 40 years? HaKadosh Baruch Hu used that as a laboratory, as a place to teach them, to educate them. What does it mean to have bitachon in Hashem? What they saw and what they had strong was emunah. It says, "Bayamin b'Hashem Moshe Hazor." It's clear to them, like day and night, that God exists. That they had no doubt whatsoever about that. No problem with that. But from emunah to bitachon is a big distance, a tremendous distance. Because what is bitachon? I not only believe in Him, that He exists, I trust Him. I trust Him in everything. Even if something is not going smoothly, I'm having a hard time, it's rough, panasa, I don't know how I'm going to pay the bills, I trust Him that this is for my good, that He'll take care of me. That requires a tremendous level of bitachon, of faith in God. Where do you learn this? A Jewish child, when he grows up, does not have bitachon. It's impossible. Bitachon takes time to develop. Hopefully the child absorbed from his parents and from school, from his parents. Emunah. And even in Emunah there's various levels. But today, Baruch Hashem, if one is born into a family, he doesn't have to struggle to figure it out on his own. Some Jews have to discover this on their own, especially in the 20th and 21st century, when there's so much out there that tries to defeat this emunah, science, evolution, etc. Hundreds of years ago, Christians, Muslims, today you have all these theories and all these philosophies and all this materialism that makes it more difficult, it's more challenging. Atheists too. So there are Jews who need to rediscover this on their own. They did not get this at home. But they're able to. If they're sincere, if they have an open mind, they read, as long as they're honest. The trick is honesty. If you're honest with yourself, if you have an open mind, you will see the truth. That's all it takes. It takes patience, it takes reading, and it takes comparing and analyzing. And as long as a person has a normal mind, normal IQ, right? It's very obvious that there's a creator to this world. The only challenge that the Jews did have a few hundred years ago was a challenge not of emunah, but in the type of emunah. Either you bow down to the cross, or we burn you at the stake. That's already something else. That was a more difficult challenge. Because they were saying, we believe in God, but you got to believe that, if this guy came to redeem you from your sins, right? You know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah. I don't have to elaborate. Yeah. Right? So therefore, that was a different kind of a challenge, and that was a difficult challenge because they were being put to death because of that. But Baruch Hashem, many were able to resist the pressures of the Inquisition. However, bitachon is a whole different story. That one is not born with, that one does not pick up so quickly. That one takes time to develop. Because we are taught several things. Number one, everything that Hashem does is for our good. Everything that He does is for our good. So why did He hold back water for 3 years? Because He wanted to teach them a lesson. Lesson number 1. When you have no water for several days, and you're entitled to water, ask nicely. Pray. Don't yell, don't curse, don't complain. I'm here, I'm listening, I see everything. When you don't have something that you want, you're still single, you want to get married, don't complain. Some Jews after the Holocaust, and I'm not going to judge them because I wasn't in Baruch Hashem in their shoes, but they complain, where was God? Right? Where is He? Why don't you look for Him? You will find He's around. Right? Don't complain. If you have a question, try to find an answer. And there's an answer. Just don't complain. Hashem held back water because He wanted to. This was a test. How will they react? And they reacted, of course, not in the right way. The right way is when you want something, ask, pray for, and hopefully we'll be able to grant your wish if possible. So, during the 40 years, HaKadosh Baruch Hu was developing their midat bitachon, developing this relationship with you, and showing how they should relate to the Almighty, what He expects of them, and what they should be expecting of Him. Anyway, so that is the basic difference between the various groups. The first 2 groups who had the will and the desire to do the mitzvah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it was a lot clearer to them. They had a better understanding of what Hashem expects of them. They had a much better understanding of this relationship. And therefore it was easier of them to do what? To think, what does Hashem want of me? What would He want? Not what I want. And of course this brings to mind the story that I told you several times. Bachur Yeshiva, serious boy, who met up with his rabbi after many years. After he went on his own, he started a business. And of course, once you get into business, you're not so observant. Unfortunately, sometimes you learn Torah on a regular basis. This boy was not the most observant one. But when he was in yeshiva, he was a good boy. The rabbi meets up with his former student and he says, so how are you doing, my dear student? He says, Rabbi, I have no complaints to God. That's his answer. So the rabbi says, that's not what I want to hear. That's not important. What's important is God has no complaints about you. That you have no complaints about God, who cares? Fine. I want to know if He has any complaints about you. Tell me, what do you do? How are you conducting your life, your daily routine? That's what's more important. Okay, so what is the root? The difference between the various groups, the various people? The root is called hitmardut, haratzon litmared. There are individuals who want to rebel, who do not want to accept upon themselves a yoke. They'd rather have no burden. And there are some that are willing to accept a burden. That is the word Naaseh Nishma. When people said those key words, Naaseh V'Nishma, What did they do? They said first Naaseh and then V'nishma. I'm so convinced that this is good for me. I'm so convinced. I'm willing to do it blindly. Nishma, harkach. Usually a certain person says, Ani Ishma, let me hear, is it a good deal or not? Then I'll think about it. When people do this, everything mañana. When I get married, I'll keep Shabbat. Once I settle down and I have a job, I'll come and learn Torah. They postpone everything. These are not serious people. Judaism requires Naaseh v'nishma. First of all, jump into it. Do it. It's the correct thing. It's right. Your grandfather gave his life for this. It was good enough for him. It's good enough for you. If it's not, what are you saying? You're smarter than him? Yeah. A lot of Jews today, they don't keep Judaism because they think that their grandfather was primitive.
They think.
The problem is that how do they explain that hundreds of generations before the grandfather, they did the exact same thing and they were willing to give their lives for it. Great rabbis and prophets, they were primitive too, and you are smarter than them. They were willing to do this even if it costed their life. And you ask, oh, that doesn't make sense. It's beyond, technology has changed, life is different today. All these sorts of excuses. When the Torah says that this is eternal, this is forever for all generations. So what is the problem here in this individual? Ha'itmardut. He wants to rebel. He doesn't want to take an oath. He doesn't want to accept a burden. That's the basic difference. What is the ring in men's ear? Anybody know? Well, don't tell me what West Hollywood is. Because that they have a different interpretation of an earring.
Depends which ear.
I know you're such an expert. Yeah, really? Sure. What if they put it on both ears? That's also something else? Both ways? At least the original idea of the earring is very similar to the earring in the Torah. Whose ears were pierced? A servant, right? Slave, who wanted to stay longer with his master.
Yeah.
Right? The individual who puts an earring in his ear because of pressures of society that everybody does, he's willing to stoop down to the level of a slave. That's what he's saying. That's the statement that he made. He's willing to stoop down to that level. He's willing to be a slave of the latest fad. Whatever, you know what one of the fads was? Maybe it's still around, I don't know. But I know 20 years ago, one of the fads was to go with torn jeans. Still? Well, you're the expert in that too, right? Material. Right? Material. They pay more for this, right? They pay more for torn jeans than for...
Yeah.
How do you explain that? A human being is willing to be a slave of the latest fad, of other human beings, but not a slave of Borei Olam. Because that's what he says. I'd rather be a slave of this and not of that. It's a form of rebellion, like the hippies, to rebel against the word of authority. Authority, exactly. Not to have that burden, but in a sense you do have a burden. The burden of society that demands of you to be like them. So either way you're a slave. If you're going to be a slave, might as well be a servant of Hashem.
The best boss.
Exactly, he's the best boss. Why be a servant? But that is, of course, the animal instinct that every is to rebel, not to accept what he sees or what he perceives as a burden, which is mitzvot, that regulates his life. In the morning, you've got to wash your hands before you do anything. You've got to make a blessing before you put it into your mouth. So that regulation and that routine is perceived as a burden. Everything else, I get to do everything I want. That's not a burden. Well, does anybody get to do anything you want? You have to pay taxes whether you want it or not, right? So either way, you don't get to do whatever you want. So that is the basic difference between the two groups. Okay, the last item is Lashon Hara. Towards the end of Parashat Beha'lotecha, we find that Miriam and Aaron spoke Lashon Hara. They gossiped about Moshe. Moshe separated himself from his wife, and they were wondering why. Now they said, even though he speaks with that, you may claim that's the reason for wanting to be with his wife because he wants in his holiness. So do we. We have also spoken with. We're also on a very high level, and we were not instructed to leave our wives. And he's doing this on his own. So basically, they were speaking, and Hashem came out censored with that. How did he do this? Mashal and Madavar, the best way to understand it. There was once a businessman who had an employee. This employee took care of all the business, deliveries as well, of all the goods. On one day, there was a gentleman standing not too far from the store. He noticed that this employee was taking some garments, some material from the store, and he saw him cross the street and going into some home. And as a result of this incident that he observed, he immediately spread the word that employee is a thief. That he just saw him taking material, or taking it to somebody else's home, and hiding it or whatever. And the rumors spread. Rumors spread like fire. So what happens when the rumors spread? This employee got a bad reputation. And so did his boss, who runs this way, or allows this to happen. So when the boss found out about this, fortunately he was able to find where the rumors started. If you're able to do so, you're able to destroy the whole rumor. Otherwise, how are you going to stop everybody from talking about it? So he got to the man and said, "What did you do? Why did you say what you said? You should have given him the benefit of the doubt. Perhaps all he was doing was delivering. He's my employee, and I trust him. And the reason why you suspected him, and the reason why you spread this false rumor is only because of one reason. And that is the reason why most Lashon Hara. When you see something suspicious, you see something that's not right, and you're tempted to talk about it, and something just can't control themselves. People see something and they do themselves. It's one thing. Their impressions may be wrong or right. The problem is that they can't control themselves, and they want to talk, right? They talk and talk and talk, and they add, and they change the story. They started out one way, then it's completely different. That's the danger of Lashon Hara. So the businessman tells him, "Listen, you saw something, fine. You didn't understand what was going on. I can appreciate that, but why didn't you ask? If you see something, go over it. What is this all about?" When a person sees something that suspects, go ahead and ask. Don't reach conclusions without asking, because you will reach most of the time the wrong conclusion. And experience has shown that anybody who does the opposite, dan lechav zechut, he judges people positively instead of negatively, he will be right. I don't know if it's 90% of the time, 95% of the time. If you judge people favorably, you will see that you did the right thing. It was not like you suspected. Hashem tells Aaron and tells Miriam, "Why didn't you ask Moshe? Why didn't you start talking? You saw something that Moshe was doing was right. Go ahead and ask." If people would ask, they would avoid Lashon Hara. We don't have time to speak about the seriousness of Lashon Hara, but let me just tell you that it's the most difficult avonot sins that there are. It breeds hatred amongst people because you develop a certain impression. It's mahloket, division, this and that. Creates a tremendous amount of problems. And that is that is the main reason that brought about the destruction of the second temple, Sikhenam. Base of Satan. Where did that come from? Lashon Hara, caring about the other, for the other. It's all in the same family, these problems. Lashon Hara, when somebody speaks bad about somebody else, you know what he's doing? So I'm going to make it very brief. He's accusing him, right? As soon as Reuven accuses Shimon of doing something, he automatically opens his own book. We are supposed to be in court only once a year. Anybody who speaks Lashon Hara, every time he speaks Lashon Hara, he's in court. Because he's accusing. You're accusing, we will accuse you. It's a midah keneged midah. So just like when one is in danger, his books are open and exposed. When one speaks Lashon Hara, he automatically is opening up his book. It's like he's taking himself to court and suing himself. It's ridiculous. People do not realize it. That's why it's important to discuss this problem of Lashon Hara. It's terrible. At home, whether it's at the dinner table or elsewhere, we talk about people. What do you do?
It's true.
Even if it's true, you have to be very careful not to gossip or badmouth someone. It's none of our business. If you have a complaint, bring it up privately. Don't share it with your kids or definitely not with your wife. She's going to share with you. It's going to spread. Yeah. Eventually, it's going to come to us. Baruch Hashem. Some women are exceptional, but the problem is that some individuals. Anyway, I try different things, and I'm still learning what's the best approach with women. I sometimes keep quiet, and I don't say anything, and that's terrible too. Then they really get upset. They're very upset, right? That's true, huh? Yeah, you have to talk. You can't be completely quiet. So you have to play it down.
You have to understand.
You have to be very diplomatic and polite. But the best thing to do is, I really think one of the most important things to do is to remind the individual that you're speaking to, if they're very curious, because then your excuse is against Hashem's will. It's an avera that helps to calm down the situation. They still might be curious, but they forget very quickly. One of my best tactics, I shouldn't be saying it, I'm recording it, but one of my strategies, I'll share it with you because I think it works. Yeah. So what did you say you bought yesterday? And quickly change subject. And after that, one more subject. And that usually takes. Usually, not always. Sometimes it was such a big lashon hara.
Come back to it.
It was so, something happened so that it comes back to it. So you got to use your imagination. Anyway, change subjects. But you have to avoid at all costs about somebody else to him. Why did he do it? When it comes to shidduchim, of course, marriages, there are halachot. What you may disclose and what not. Partner. Exactly. Should I take him as a partner? And you know that he's cheating. You got to disclose this information. You can't put a stumbling block in front of a blind man. A blind man meaning that he's unaware. Right? You have to tell him the truth. You have to tell him in a nice way. You could say don't say he's not honest. Say, I would recommend someone else. Or something like that. You don't have to put it bluntly. Sometimes you have to say the same thing with the shidduch. If she or he has a disease, right? You have to disclose it. It's not right for him to marry something that he doesn't want to marry. So there are halachot in how one should conduct himself in avoiding lashon hara.
Check him out.
Yeah. Anyway, so this is the rebuke that Aaron and Moshe and Aaron and Miriam received for not having asked Moshe at least before they spoke about it. The last point is related to this, and that is brought down in the Haftarah. The Haftarah says, Roni v'simchi batzion, hini niba v'shachanti b'tofech Moshe. You should be glad and happy. Hashem is speaking to the Jewish nation, because I'm about to come and be with you. And once I come and be with you, v'nilhu goim rabim, many nations will join and will want to be a part of you. They will want to come. By then it will be too, because everything will be obvious. But anyway, they will want to come anyway. The prophet is saying that we will be happy, we will be rejoiced. So I think the Magidna brings down the mashal. What kind of happiness is? What's the source of this happiness the Jewish people will have? There was once it's a mashal, an individual who was accused of doing something which he never did, and he was put in prison, and he was in handcuffs, interrogated, tortured. In the end, they let him out. He threw a big party, and he invited all his friends. People came, they had a good time, a good meal, and at the end of the party, nobody was wishing each other, may we come to such smachot again. You know how sometimes people wish themselves at a bar mitzvah, at a wedding, may our children have similar smachot. Nobody was wishing each other because nobody wants to go to jail to throw a big party, right? Nobody wants to throw these kind of parties, to have such kind of smachot. There was another individual, however, who won the lottery, who won a lot of money at the lottery, and he threw a big thing. A lot of people came and enjoyed it and celebrated with him. And of course, at the end of that, everybody said, may we all win the lottery, right? May we all make smachot as such. The Navi over here is telling us what's the source of the happiness of people. When Mashiach comes, why will they be happy? What's the source of it? That they went through such a long galut, they suffered so much, and finally they came out. The Goyim will not see it as something happy about. They would rather have not gone through what they do, even to come out and make a big party, right? Who wants to make such a party? We would rather have not gone through this galuyot, which is the least set off. So the Navi says, no. That will not be the reason why. It will not be because of what you think. That because we were persecuted, because Baruch Hashem the galut has finally come to a stop, because we're finally getting out and coming to us. No. That will not be the source of the happiness. Of course we will celebrate that. What will the real source of happiness be? Because I will be with you. I will reside with you and not with the goyim. That will be the big simcha. And how do I know that will be the source of the simcha? Because v'nilvu goyim rabim el Hashem, because the goyim will want to join you and celebrate with you. In other words, that they will acknowledge and recognize it was worth it to be.